This is going to be a short video presentation on Shopsith 12-inch disc sander. The first thing we want to do is take the lower saw guard and put that in place. That's tightened down with the machine screw. On the later models, these can be moved in or out. Once I have the lower guard in place, I'll take my disc sander. And remember, everything on your Shopsith attaches to the main spindle the same way. So I'll set that down inside the guard, and also remember that we have a flat spot, a tapered flat on the shaft. So we'll line up the set screw with the tapered flat, make sure that's seated all the way back, and just tighten that down. I'm going to bring my lower saw guard in so it's about a ½ inch away from the sanding disc. Next, I'm going to bring the disc sander and the table to about a ½ inch from each other. And I want to make sure the table is a little bit above the center line here. This is a great tool for doing freehand sanding. A couple of quick things on freehand sanding, or any sanding really on a disc sander. You always want to be sanding in the quadrant between here and here. In other words, from the center line here, center line here. So we want to sand here. And the reason for that is the rotation of the disc will hold the wood down onto the table. If we got back into this area, it could lift it up and it might get away from us. I know that sanding is not the most fun thing that we do in a wood shop. I've never yet heard a guy say to his wife, "Honey, I'm going to go down and sand for a ½ hour just for the fun of it." But you will find with your Shopsith, it makes quick work of it, you get nice results, and it's really not too bad to do. I sort of enjoyed it. You may find that you need to sand the end of an angle cut like this, or a compound angle. Well, obviously I'm not going to be able to hold that by hand like I did on those other sanding operations there. I need a way to secure this. I need a way to duplicate this angle if it's a compound. And I can do this not just on a simple angle, but also on a compound angle. For example, if you're making a shadow box picture frame or trim around a door or window or the top of a grandfather clock. Very frequently we find that we need to have a piece of wood that is square this way, squared this way, and smooth on the end. It's just one of those things we run into all the time. Well, again, trying to do that by hand is going to be impossible. The other thing we'd like to be able to do is make sure that our run of boards is exactly the same length. If you're doing a face frame or you're doing a raised panel door, those outside rails and stiles need to be exactly the same length. But it's one of those things we run into all the time. If you try to cut to length, you can get close, but you may not be exactly right on. And if you've ever seen cabinet doors where there's a joint that's opened up, you know that that's just not very attractive. And wood putty, in my opinion, should not be used in fine woodworking. All right, let's show you how we can sand this very easily with your Shopsith. I'm going to set my miter gauge back to a 90 degree, and there are stops here for that. I use my gripping miter gauge again, my safety miter gauge. But we're going to add one more feature here. I'm going to bring the rip fence over. Whichever model you have, you should have a rip fence with it. And this is designed just to back up my piece of wood. Now, to be sure everything is sanded to the right length. Here's a nice little chip. But we're going to add one more feature here. I'm going to bring the rip fence over. Whichever model you have, you should have a rip fence with it. And this is designed just to back up my piece of wood. Now, to be sure everything is sanded to the right length, put a line on your piece of wood where you want to sand to. I want to set the Shopsmith up as kind of a production jig here. Now here I have moved the camera to the back side of the machine because I couldn't get a clear shot, but the way you were looking at it before, I was standing on the other side there. So just kind of take that into account as you're watching this. I'm shooting from the back side here, but I of course will be working on the front side of the machine. If you can see the line that I just put on there, that's what we want to sand to. Let's try to run. Just like everything else, turn on my dust collector, turn on the machine at the right speed. And here's what I think is one of the best features of your Shopsmith disc sander. You can actually sand pieces to length very easily using the dial that you see here. Simply set the first piece to the length you want it to be, bring your sanding disc up to the point where it touches it, and then set the dial to 0. That will put a stop exactly at that place. So once you've set the dial to 0 and locked the quill feed lock, you'll be able to sand as many pieces as you like. They'll come out smooth and square, trued up, and exactly the same length. And so many of our projects require that, and this makes it easy and gives us much better results.